So I will start with beginning e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, e5. Here is the only move which is considered that white can try to punish black for weakening with squares is knight b5. There are also moves like knight going back or knight f5, which you will see later in the other videos. So black plays here d6, and traditionally the main attempt from white to fight for advantage is to use square d5 and to play bishop g5. Generally, it was never considered the move knight d5 to be a problem for black, because after knight takes d5, e takes d5, it was established long ago that black gets a good play with knight b8. And the point was that we see that white has this pawn majority on the queen side, and black has a pawn majority on the king side. So a logical move here is c4, and black plays knight e7, then bishop e7, then black castles short, drives away the knight, plays f5, knight comes to d7, and generally it was always considered that black gets here a good play. That's why white players started to play in this direction: bishop g5, a6, knight a3, b5. This was considered always practically a starting position for Sveshnikov Sicilian, where white has two major directions. This is a positional line, which starts with knight d5. But then after knight d5, basically all white can pretend here to get a very small positional advantage after bishop takes f6. Now bishop takes f6, and to play c3. This was for a long time the main line, with the idea to bring the knight into play. Black will develop the bishop on g5 and has a bishop pair. And these days, black has very clear ways to neutralize completely white's initiative. The main direction of playing for advantage after b5 was, in the past, move bishop takes f6, g takes f6, and now knight d5. And here black has two possibilities: bishop g7 and f5. Traditionally, the main move is f5 here. So white has a strong knight on d5 and a better pawn structure, but black has a bishop pair and good dynamic possibilities. So in this position, white has generally two ways of playing. So either to take on f5, and for instance, after bishop takes f5, c3 to bring the knight back into play. He can do it also in a different way, to play first c3 here, after which the best move is bishop g7, and now to take on f5. And it's again the same situation. So this is one possibility, big possibility for white, to take on f5 at some point, or to keep the pawn on e4 until play bishop d3. And in this direction, generally, it was considered that white has the most prospects to get an advantage. And after bishop d3, the pawn is hanging on f5. Black's answer is bishop e6. And now, for a long time, it was considered that queen h5 is a move which poses most problems for black. But then it was discovered that after rook g8, black gets a good play here. This is a variation which happened in the game, for instance, which we just saw, Brodsky-Kramnik. And generally, Sveshnikov Sicilian was not very popular, mainly because of this line, queen h5. But then, in the beginning of 90s, it was proved that black gets very interesting and rich possibilities after rook g8. So white players started here to look for other ways to play for advantage. And the main move became castle short, after which the main continuation for black became bishop takes d5, e takes d5, knight e7. Here I would like to point out an important thing, that the standard move was bishop g7, after which white continues queen h5 now, and now the g5 is closed. And generally this was considered for a long time to be better for white, but black has a lot of resources in such positions. And in a game which was played literally a few days ago, Caruana played here rook b8 in order to prepare himself for the move c4, and after c3 black played f4, then black castled short. The king went to h8, and black won a fantastic game in the Olympiad against Master Vasilis Caruana with black. But I recommend the main line, and this is what I want to point out here. Generally, in many lines, black has several very playable options. But I always try to concentrate on a single direction, which I consider to be the best. And I try to make it as simple as it gets, although it is, of course, a very complex opening. And for instance, this position is very complex. And it was established that black here has actually enough resources to get very good counterplay possibilities. Sveshnikov Sicilian started to grow in popularity in the middle of 90s when Kramnik started to play it with the black pieces. He actually started to play it before, as we saw in 91. He already played, I think, in 90. But then in 93, 94, 95 especially, he became a top grandmaster, and he was having very good results with the black pieces in Sveshnikov Sicilian. And white players started also to look for ways to get advantage. And so the theory started to develop, and Sveshnikov Sicilian became extremely popular, and really very, very popular. Almost every single top player played at least few times Sveshnikov Sicilian with the black pieces. And even Kasparov, the beginning of 2000, he played in some serious games Sveshnikov Sicilian. And so this was a line in the end of 90s, beginning of 2000, where white was posing most problems for black, until these problems were solved completely. In the beginning of our century, mostly thanks to efforts of Peter Leko, who also started to play in the end of 90s the Sveshnikov Sicilian with the black pieces. And so white players started to look for other ways of putting some problems. And that's why here the direction of knight d5 started to develop even deeper. And in 2005, Alexander Morozevich in the tournament in St. Louis, after bishop e7, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, he played c4. This was in 2005 in the game against Leko, actually. So Leko was playing with white and with black, but okay, Morozevich with white played c4 here, variation which was never considered dangerous for black, because after b4, white doesn't have many active possibilities. But actually Morozevich discovered that this position is very safe for white. White has a very simple plan here. Against Leko, he developed with g3, h4, played the bishop on h3. King went from f1 to g2 in that game. And Morozevich actually won the game. And he continued to play with variation. And then it was discovered that actually white has many possibilities here. He can put the bishop on e2, queen on d3, rook is coming to d1, a very safe line. And suddenly, in this variation, it was established that it is almost impossible for black to get active play. And the popularity of Sveshnikov Sicilian went quite a lot down. It was not very clear why, because okay, these positions were safe for white, and white was playing for advantage without much risk of losing. Probably that's why. But then in correspondence games, actually, and the computers, with the development of the computer engines, it shows that black, the position is just equal. Okay, black doesn't have that many active possibilities, but the position is equal. And but still, mostly black players on the top level, they started to answer e4 with e5, and the popularity of Sveshnikov Sicilian went down until 2018, when in the World Championship match, Carlsen against Caruana, Carlsen surprised his opponent. He started to answer e4 only with c5, and intending to play Sveshnikov Sicilian. And he played Sveshnikov Sicilian and Caruana. It was clear that in all these variations, white has no chances at all to fight for advantage. And Caruana implemented a new approach, I would say, although it was already well known, but it used to be completely harmless for black. And after knight takes d5, e takes d5, knight b8, the move a4. So this was the idea of Caruana, to bring quickly the knight to c4 and to play a5. So the theory, starting with 2019, started to develop in this direction. And knight d5 is at the moment the direction where the white players are trying to put problems for black. Now I would like to show you how I arrange material and to tell about some technical part about this video course. So this is, you can see here that there are 12 parts in this video course, and each part consists of a video where I introduce the variation. So you see that after the first part, which is the introductory, in this position after knight f5, I analyze in the second part the various 6 moves for white, apart from knight b5. So knight f5, for instance, or knight f3 or knight e2. So this is the part 2. So part 2 has an introductory video about all these moves, and then there is always a database, and the analysis and the deeper details you can always find in the games from the database. I try to make the database between 4 and 6 games, where all the variations which I discuss in the introductory video, you can find the detailed analysis in the annotations to the games from the attached database. So I hope you will enjoy this video course. And once again, there is quite a lot of theory, and it is not very simple to understand everything and all the transpositions. There are a lot of transpositions, especially in these lines in the end of the video course, where I go to these lines with castle short and bishop takes d5, takes d5, knight e7. There are many transpositions here, but I explain them in the video, and I also give a hint about it in the games from the database. It takes some effort to understand exactly these transpositions, but once you understand it, and I think I present it quite clearly, it is very enjoyable to analyze this from the black side, and especially to start to playing. Enjoy it.